So today we have a 2014 Nissan Juke Nismo. We actually built this car for this gentleman two years ago. Direct injection, all that stuff. It did 423 horsepower with meth injection and auxiliary fuel and all that stuff. Well, it's back. We did a port injection conversion on it. So now we have it on the dyno for a retune. So we're gonna see how the power stacks up from before to now. It's the exact same turbo, same manifold, downpipe, everything's the same. We even managed to adapt a Juke intake manifold to the MR-A8. Ignore all this wiring, it's for something else. This is a Juke intake manifold with an MR-A8. Notice there's no direct injection pump there. So we're gonna see basically a 1-to-1 with direct injection versus port injection. This will be on methanol. So we're going to do the gasoline tune today, which is basically going to be wastegate spring pressure. And then if we have time or fuel, we will put ethanol in it, hook the boost controller up, and make some more. But this is going to be a pretty standard tuning session. The engine is basically brand new. So we're going to tune it. We'll do a compression test halfway through the tuning, make sure everything is looking good. And then we will go from there. The interior is a bit of a mess right now because we don't have his fuel tech we don't have his fuel tech mounted. And you know, it's a bit of a mess just because we're midway through basically building the thing. So let's get to it. So that was the first kind of full rip I've done in fourth gear. 256 and our peak of torque was, what, 225. And I let out at about 6,500 RPM, to be honest, because it just felt like it was revving out forever. And if we look at our data log here, you can see I let out. And that was at like 16 pounds of boost. So comparison, on a stock turbo to make that much power, you would need about 20 pounds of boost, something like that. And this is being pretty conservative on our timing. And it wants to rev out more. Maybe we can rev these out to 10,000 RPM. Not to say I'm going to do that on this engine. But if that torque stayed, then our power would have kept going up. But doing pulls from 2,000 RPM all the way to red line is quite a bit of beating on the engine, so I'm going to look over stuff, adjust tune, and keep going. So same peak, and we can see our torque is kind of dropping off. There's no boost control right now. Our torque kind of drops off just because, you know, that's how turbos work. Because our boost is it's staying flat relatively anyway. So if we go to the pull here, we'll see that our boost basically sits at 16 psi that entire pull. So without the boost rising, our torque's going to drop slightly. So that right there is pretty smooth as far as a torque curve goes. Got a little bit of touching up to do, but wastegate, I think we're good here. So now what we're going to do is hook up the boost controller, and we're going to turn that boost up on gasoline, obviously. We'll turn that boost up, and we'll get some more power out of it. But 16 psi, which is basically the, 4 less psi you'd run on a stock turbo, and we're making already more than what stock turbo can do, because big turbos are awesome. I'm also still not revving it out very high. At that torque, you know, he'll be able to go and go and go and go and go, which is great for his gear ratio. But at the end of the day, revving it out that slowly is just a lot of stress on the engine. So, you know, most people would have shifted by then anyway, because you're out of your peak torque. So, gotta keep playing. All right, we got a little bit of duty cycle in the boost controller. That's hooked up. We're gonna see what it does. Here we go. on a tear. Okay, I gotta check something because 30% duty cycle should be like barely on. The thing was making like 25 pounds of boost. Intercooler pipe blew off. That's a new one. That doesn't usually happen. Gotta fix that. Oh, okay. That I have seen happen before. Not usually that big, but I guess 25 pounds of boost will do that. Okay, time to dig into the spare collection and get a new boot. All right, we got that fixed. Let's give this another go, shall we? Okay, started breaking up pretty bad around there, so I let out. About 256 already, so going places. All right, let's try this again, shall we? Nice and flat. All right, I got something to work with. So I'm having an issue where it's breaking up once we get up into the boost, a pretty high boost I should say. So once we're at like, you know, once it's holding the boost out, we're breaking up. You can see that green line, it's wiggling around, but I gotta call it a day because I gotta go watch the kiddo, so I'll pick it up tomorrow. The bunny's a new student?
Yeah, her name's Honey.
Oh, okay.
And she loves nature. So, are you gonna do a nature science today?
I can do a nature science today. Not sure what
She's
that means.
a new student. Introduce everybody to concentrator.
Oh, okay, I will. You have fun at work, okay?
So, tell her that it's a little scary to be at a new school.
No, you'll be fine.
Bye!
Bye. Okay, we are back. So yesterday, every time I was getting up into a decent amount of boost, we were having a breaking up issue. And it's not RPM related or signal related because I checked all that and everything's reading 35 teeth like it should. So I'm gonna gap the plugs down even more than they were and see if that fixes it. All right, revved out. Got a couple pulls in. The car's not making any power for some reason. That last pull was 21, 22 PSI. I didn't film it because I'm just trying to figure this out. And we're only getting about 270 horsepower, which we should be getting closer to about 320. Now I'm fairly conservative on the timing because it's still on gasoline, but we should still be getting more power than that at that boost on this turbo. So I'm gonna hook up the boost leak tester and see if we have any leaks. And then I'm gonna have to go from there because it's very strange. We're not making like any power. Like, don't get me wrong, 270 is nothing to like, you know, joke about on a car that makes 170 from the factory, but it should be making way more than that. And again, I'm very conservative on the timing just because it's gasoline and I'm hesitant to, you know, bump that timing up more. Should also point out that the VVT I have very conservative, like ridiculously conservative, so that the bottom end isn't crazy, so that the ramp in is nice. That shouldn't affect our peak number, and also the torque being as low as it is. So I'm gonna do some investigating and do some playing around, and I'll get back onto the camera once I get some more information. Okay, that's a new one. The barb is leaking, coming out of the turbo. Like a lot. Pardon the noise, look at that. Good Lord. I've never seen that before. That's a big boost leak. Okay. It just pulled right out. Huh. All right, I'm gonna let this thing cool down. I'll put some like epoxy on that and put it back in, I guess. Huh. Interesting. So stuck a little epoxy in there. We're gonna let that thing sit. I gave it a couple of hammer whacks in because they are press fit. I've just never seen one loosen up like that before. So we'll let that sit for 20, 30 minutes and then do another test on this thing. I've said this in previous videos. These are on like Amazon for like, I think like 80 bucks. Everybody should have one of these if you have a turbo car. Everybody. This thing is great. It's self-contained. You don't need a compressor. I'm not sponsored by them, but whoever you are. It comes with like a little thing so you can put in exhausts or in intakes, and this thing is awesome. It just uses some oil that you can get at like Walmart. It's cool, and if you don't want the smoke, they have it so you can just do air. Like, everybody should have one of these. So let that sit, and then we'll try this again, and it should pick up quite a bit. That's a big leak, especially right at the turbo. Like, that's a big leak. All right, we are all sealed up. Woo! All right, that's definitely a lot more like it. So it's at 293 at 20-ish pounds, 21 pounds of boost. That's more where I expect this to be. So the turbo is just starting to wake up at that boost level, and we're only running 11% duty cycle on the boost controller. But that's basically just so I can get it to level out. Now the boost is still for some reason up top wanting to fall off, so I have to like ramp my boost control up. That might have to do with the fact that we're running an internal wastegate without a top and bottom port. It's just a top port normal actuator, which means we're gonna have a hard time keeping the boost from tapering off, just because the back pressure is gonna push that open, and there's nothing to push it that way except for the spring. So we're gonna see how far we can get. This definitely would pick up a lot more if we were able to just hold the gate on the other side with just a little bit of air pressure. But we're working with what we got here. So we got it all sorted out. So on gasoline, it's almost 300 horsepower. This is also after many pulls in a row. So it's 49 degrees in the shop, and our intake air temps were sitting at 75, 76 degrees through that entire thing. So I just touched up this little tiny mess of fuel up here. We'll do one more rip at this power level. We'll save this as a tune. We'll go into the next tune. We'll return the gasoline power up a little bit more. And then once we get that kind of at where it's gonna stop like making power, or it's gonna start wanting to knock, or it's not making any more power, we'll go back and we'll start doing ethanol. All right, so 287, decent torque curve. We can see it's falling off here. Now, as I move on to higher power, because this is like going to be his like base map, we'll kick the duty cycle up to get the boost to go up just a little bit. That right there is internal wastegate. It's pushing open more than it wants to, because as I'm increasing duty cycle throughout this pull, so at the end of the pull we're at 11%. The boost isn't going up, it's staying at 20, which is this line right here. So the boost is staying level with what I'm doing with the boost controller. But because of the way, engines work, if you want that torque to keep climbing, you can't do it with ignition timing. Like, we're at the top of what we can do with ignition timing on gasoline. You can't do it with ignition timing, you gotta give it a little bit more boost to do that. So more air, which means more fuel, which means more boom, which means more torque. We're at the top of what we can do for ignition timing on this particular setup on gasoline. But this is where we're going to call this map. This is done. This is 1920 PSI, to call it 200 and 280, 290 horsepower, very conservative. This is great for driving around every day. So now we're gonna move on. I'm gonna put probably 3-4 more pounds in it on gasoline, see what we get out the other side, and then that'll be that, and then we're gonna move on to the ethanol tuning. All right, so there's definitely something going on. So I'm not filming pulls, I'm trying to figure this out. The last pull I did, everything was mint. Fuel adjustments were great up until the very end, but we're not worried about that. Boost was level except for right there, which I think I know why that did that. It's where I have the generic duty cycle starting to ramp up, so we'll just clean that up. But we made 3 more pounds of boost compared to our previous pull. And all we did was pick up in the middle, which is good. I mean, I'm not complaining about that. We picked up a good, 20 foot-pounds, 20 to 30 foot-pounds in the middle. Like, that's good. But the thing is just falling off like bad. So there's something definitely going on where we're not making power for some reason. Now, I tried putting some ignition timing in it, and it just wouldn't take it. Don't know why it wouldn't take it, but it wouldn't. It started to want to knock. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on now. You can see the timing is kind of flat. So I'll make it ramp some more and see if that helps. So it's dropping to right when boost is coming on, and then we can start ramping it up. I guess I'll make that ramp a little bit more aggressive. It's not trying to knock like up top. It's just, it's not actually knocking. Let me be clear. So I use uprev to monitor the knock signal on these cars. So like this is our knock count. Like that whole pull, it didn't knock. The pull previous to that, it had the starts of knock, which is like the engine starting to make weird sounds it's not supposed to, but it didn't knock. I try to keep that all at 0 because that's just the safest way to do it, obviously. So I'm gonna throw some timing in this and see what it does. It's not like it's getting hot. Intake air temps, a little on the toasty side for what this is, but I've been beating the snot out of it for quite a while, and the recovery time's good. The beginning of the pull we're at 75 degrees. End of the pull we're at 91, which again isn't horrible. There's just something amok, and I can't figure out what. So I'm gonna let it cool down for a little bit, because again, it could just be because I'm beating the snot out of it. It just doesn't want to make any power because the engine's just soaked. I'm gonna let it cool down. I'm gonna do some leak tests and see where we come off, because 3 pounds of boost, we should be getting more than that to the end. This also could be related to that wastegate thing I was talking about earlier. The wastegate, though it's making boost pressure, the wastegate is being pushed open more and cracking. No matter what the boost pressure is, if it's cracking, it's slowing the turbo down. So it can maintain pressure if your head flow is good enough, but it can crack and slow air movement down, which is what the engine actually needs. Boost is just a measure of resistance. I mean, we are in a stock head with stock cam profile, so I don't expect up top to be like amazing, but I would expect 3 pounds of boost to just do more to about like right here than it actually is. So I'm gonna look into that. Oh boy. Okay, so that's pretty gnarly. And there's a hose somewhere down there that has started leaking. So those weren't leaking before, obviously, and now they are. So when we turn the boost up, it created leaks. So blow off gasket's leaking. I gotta take this pipe off, put this thing directly onto the throttle body and see what's leaking under there. Well, it's a day of firsts. So if we look here, you see all that like goo looking stuff? That's actually accumulation of the oil that's used in this thing. And it is pouring out around this area here. You can see it. pouring out around that bolt. It's not going to show up on camera, but I could see it when I like look down there. The intake manifold cracked. Basically, it cracked like right there. So we have here an intake manifold off another car, clearly. Now, to adapt this intake manifold to the A8 engine, like on this car, you basically cut off the entire PCV section and then plastic weld it shut. It takes like 4 hours. Hate doing it, I've done it several times. We're not getting any air leaks from that. None. So we know it's not that. The air leaks we are getting are coming from, again, it's gonna be hard to kind of show. There's a seam right there around that, like next to that bolt, where this all kind of meets up into one big unit. You can actually see the seam on the bottom right there on that runner, that line. So from what I can tell, without taking that manifold off, which I'm about to do, that cracked. And it wasn't leaking before. You guys saw the smoke test. It was not leaking before. So that just started, so that just happened. If it was up towards the top, I'd be like, okay, maybe the plastic welding weakened everything, but it's not. It's just not. So I'm gonna let this thing cool down, and then I'm gonna have to pull the intake manifold off this and see what I can see. Because if it was a gasket, we wouldn't be getting seepage on the bolt side on the outside. So like if it was a gasket, we would see it down, like if you look in this area over here. So if you look over in that area there, see it's wet down there. If it was a gasket, we would see wet there, but we would not see it on the bolt side because it's sitting at an angle like this. So it wouldn't be able to run its way down because it's going uphill. All right, just because I'm running out of daylight, I went ahead, I took the intake manifold off, found the leak, plastic welded it. The system is now really pressurized, right? Ooh, it's not popped off. And it's full of smoke, and we got no leaks. So we fixed all the leaks. So, back to the fun. All right, so I just did a pull. It was a lot smoother, like holy crap, smoother. I don't know where the dyno was. So, it was very, very smooth. It made, you know, I let out at 6,500 just so I could check everything. It made about the same as what it did with 3 pounds less boost still out. But it was, if we look at our graph for boost curve, you can see the boost is a lot more stable than, you know, this. So it definitely helped. It's still on the edge of wanting to knock, which is weird. I don't know, maybe I'm just used to running bigger turbos now. This is a small turbo compared to what I've been tuning the last few months. I really also think it's part of the issue is the wastegate. So I think what I'm gonna do is modify his wastegate and turn it into a 2-port. I'm thinking that's what needs to happen. Because it doesn't make sense that 3-4 more pounds of boost, we're not picking up a ton of power while taking out only, so like at the top of that we were at 18 degrees of timing. If we go back to here, we were at 23 degrees of timing. So the offset of 5 degree, I guess that would, no, the boost should make up for that. I don't know, I gotta look into this. I really think that the wastegate might be what's kicking our ass right now. All right, we are moving in the right direction now. So thin line is the pull we just did. So picked up 20 peak horsepower, and it picked up about 10 to 15 foot-pounds, basically the entire rev range. In the middle there, picked up almost 30. So, and that's on only 22 pounds. So as I've been adding timing, it's been pulling out boost. I mean, it also could be all the leaks are fixed, so things are actually reacting the way they're supposed to. So that was 22, 23. So we're talking about 3 pounds more for about 20-ish horsepower, which sounds about right to me. We're back at the ignition timing we were at before. I'm not sure what was going on before, but the leaks must have been obviously causing a problem. So I'm gonna do a little bit more boost, just a tiny bit. And then we'll do another pull. And then, I mean, for gasoline, 300 horsepower, especially with a fat torque curve like that, is way more than enough. So we're just gonna do a little bit more boost. I wanna see that number closer to like a 315, 320. And I'd like my peak torque to be a little bit closer to like 265, 270, because that'll bring all of this up a little bit more. So on gas, you would have, you know, really conservative, and then it'll have a slightly more aggressive tune before he puts ethanol in it. That's pretty good. So the 8 or 9% duty cycle I put into it was 1 more pound of boost, and we picked up, you know, everything. So that's good. In the middle there, we got to that 270-ish number. So kind of where we're at as far as peak torque and how the curve is going. And if this is gasoline, I mean, I don't want to be pushing it around too much on gasoline. There's no meth injection on this car. There's no gasoline. You know, 23 pounds of boost making over 310 horsepower. That's pretty goddamn good. Just comparison, factory turbo at like 23 pounds of boost. Even on a 6-speed, you'd be lucky to see like a peak horsepower of what, 250, maybe 240. So we're not pushing the engine too much harder, and it's paying off. Notice I ran that out a little longer. I wanted to see what that was going to do to our torque curve, and it obviously just kept falling off. So, all right, we're going to just clean that up, do one more rip to verify, and then we're going to move on to ethanol. All right, so that was perfect. So I got exactly 270 foot-pounds of torque, which is what I was expecting. And then our peak horsepower was like 315. So these are our 2 gasoline tunes. You can see how much torque we picked up everywhere. So that means everything is doing what it's supposed to. The drop off, again, either wastegate or cam flow or something like that. But it's got a nice big fat torque curve. So if we shift this thing at 7,000 RPM from second to third, it's going to drop you down to about 5, which puts you right at peak torque. So this thing is still going to be a ripper. So let's get the gas out of it and put some ethanol in it and see what we get.
Like and subscribe, guys.